Some players push with a lot of force, but it's easy to attack because they're pushing from behind the ball, not from above it. Today, we're going to cover the pushing technique. First, in a push rally, let's analyze why your balls often go long. It's because you're trying to add power by hitting harder, not by creating more spin through friction. This is why you lose control. This leads to your first common mistake, pushing the ball long. Second, you often push long against penhold players because their push is often more of a forward drive, adding pace instead of backspin. So when the incoming ball has little spin, trying to force heavy backspin will make your return go long. A third reason is using your whole arm to generate force, which makes it very difficult to add spin and maintain control. If you use your fingers and wrist, you can add both spin and pace effectively without making unforced errors. Remember, creating friction comes from the fingers and wrist. Avoid using your arm for power, as that dramatically increases the chance of error. When you use your fingers and wrist to generate spin, you can be aggressive and still be consistent. Now, let's discuss hitting the ball into the net. Hitting the net is a critical error because it's the hardest mistake to adjust during a match. In a game, aim to make fewer errors into the net. Hitting long can be corrected by adding more brush, shortening your swing, or reducing power. Alternating between hitting long and into the net will quickly destroy your confidence. There are a few reasons for hitting the net, especially when receiving serves on your backhand. You're hitting the net because your motion stops or freezes the moment you make contact with the ball. As a result, even if your push clears the net, it won't go deep. Your follow-through is too short. Even with an open racket face, the ball won't clear the net. The key here is that when you contact a heavy backspin ball, your forearm isn't providing any forward momentum. This is the same issue as in looping, a big backswing, followed by a complete stop upon contact. The correct motion is to have a compact swing and accelerate through the ball, ensuring a follow-through. Your motion must continue after contact. Avoid a long backswing that stops abruptly, and you'll make the return. When receiving, your forearm must guide the ball forward, on both your forehand and backhand. This is the number one reason for pushing into the net. The second reason is contacting long, heavy backspin balls too early. You need to let the ball come to you, not rush the contact. The biggest mistake on serve return is rushing to take the ball too early off the bounce. You must learn to wait. As long as your return is low, a slower, delayed push will produce a floating ball that is difficult for your opponent to attack. When can you take the ball early? When playing a short push, a drop shot. You should contact the ball right as it bounces. That's the time to contact early. For a long push, you want to contact the ball at the peak of the bounce. Only when I feel I can control the spin and want to be aggressive should I execute a long push at the top of the bounce. Against a heavy backspin serve, when you're unsure of the spin, you must use a soft, slower return. This soft receive is the only way to guarantee your return gets on the table. If you can't get the ball on the table, quality is irrelevant. Solve consistency first, then work on quality. The push is a high consistency shot. Its quality comes from placement and control, not raw power, speed, or spin. If you can't consistently push or loop backspin, you will develop a fear of it. You must build this awareness. If you want to learn the short push, you don't need a pro-level drop shot. Learning to return the ball half-long is a very useful skill. Especially against short balls to the forehand or middle, a slightly shorter push can effectively pull your opponent out of position. The first key to the short push is to contact the ball on the rise. The second key, if the serve has sidespin and you contact the back of the ball, you won't be able to keep it short. However, if you contact the side of the ball, you can effectively shorten the return. You struggle with short pushes against sidespin because you're contacting the back of the ball. By slightly adjusting your contact point to the side of the ball's center, your short pushes and long pushes will become much easier. Only contact the back bottom of the ball when the serve is pure backspin. This will neutralize the spin correctly. Against a left side spin serve, a simple trick for beginners is to match your racket angle to the server's. Whether you're doing a long push or a short push, mirroring the angle makes the return much simpler. If you contact the back of a sidespin ball, the spin's effect will be far more complex than you expect. This is also why many players miss their flicks. They contact the back of the ball and it goes into the net. If you match the server's spin axis with your flick, the return becomes easy. If their hook serve is angled to the right, I'll mirror that racket angle to the right to receive it. The action itself is what matters. Your first priority is to neutralize the side spin. Once the side spin is neutralized, dealing with topspin or backspin is just a matter of adjusting your vertical angle. Most amateurs make errors because they get affected by the side spin first, which then complicates the backspin or topspin. The third problem with your short push is that you contact the ball from underneath, causing your return to pop up high. Even with a vertical racket, if your starting position is below the ball, the return will go high. If you can get your racket above the ball, the trajectory will stay low. Some players push with a lot of force, but it's easy to attack because they're pushing from behind the ball, not from above it. A downward chopping motion is much more difficult for your opponent to handle than a simple forward push. This is exactly why it's so hard to defend when your opponent smashes a high ball. So, for a heavy long push or a controlled short push, get your hand up. When you can execute the push from a high position downwards, you will successfully keep the ball low. If you start low and push forward down, the ball will pop up. The same applies to a long push. An action from above the ball creates a heavy, sinking effect, making it difficult for your opponent to use your pace. However, this high-to-low contact is only for balls with light or no spin. Against a very heavy spin serve, this same motion will cause you to push the ball straight into the net. There are 3 contact relationships in a push: below the ball, behind the ball, and above the ball. Behind the ball means contacting it at the peak of its bounce. Above the ball means contacting the ball with the lower half of your racket, or even starting high and moving down to meet it. Against extremely heavy backspin, you should get under the ball and guide it forward. The second scenario, when you can handle the spin and want to add your own, you should contact the back middle of the ball for a long, aggressive push. When the ball has little spin, or you want to play a short push or add quality, raise your hand and chop down from above the ball. This downward, cutting motion is your short push, and a downward, chopping motion creates the most dangerous long push. While pros rarely get the chance to execute a high chopping push, amateurs can, because the short game has less spin. Furthermore, you need to know where to apply force in your push. For example, against a half-long ball like this, most players would choose to guide it back softly. Your instinct is the same as mine. From experience, if I'm playing a new opponent, my first instinct is to handle the ball conservatively. I would contact the back of the ball and guide it forward and down at a steady pace, without any explosive force, to avoid netting a surprisingly spinny ball. I'll play the safe return first to see his reaction, focusing on consistency. If he just pushes back or misses his first attack, I'll continue using the same safe return. Only if he has a very strong attack will I change my approach. Many players lose points by immediately trying a high-risk flick or aggressive push, making errors and falling behind early. Your opening strategy must prioritize getting the ball on the table. For a sidespin backspin serve to the middle, I start with a safe loop. I then read his return. If he just blocks, I continue. If he counterloops or drives, then I consider adding quality. My initial mindset is 100% focused on consistency. The problem is that you are often the one making the first mistake, regardless of where your opponent serves. Matches often turn on 1 or 2 points. If you are more consistent, your opponent will get impatient, try to force the attack, and make errors. That's when you win. You must learn to play a more strategic, percentage-based game. Start with the highest percentage shot. For a half-long ball, don't try a sharp push, use a simple, steady, guiding push. Against a sidespin topspin serve to your backhand, don't force it. Use a controlled block to get it on the table first. If he can't attack it well or hesitates, you gain the advantage. Third, for a short no-spin ball to your forehand, you don't need a powerful flick. Start with a simple push flick to get the rally started. First, play the ball with soft hands, focus on placement, and observe your opponent's reaction. If he's not winning the point, stick with it. If he is, then you need to move to the next level of your strategy. For example, against that middle ball, I might now raise my racket higher and use 30% of my explosive power to push it deep. Stay controlled. Use about 30% power for a sharp cut and change the placement. Against the deep backhand serve, if he keeps attacking my return down the line, I'll add a little more friction and rip it. This quick, slightly arcing ball will be much harder for him to attack. Third, for the short forehand serve, if my soft return gets attacked, I will now add more forearm acceleration to my flick to push him back. This is how you escalate your tactics progressively. If that still doesn't work, you must change the shot entirely. For example, you can't just keep pushing the middle ball harder. You must switch to a sidespin push, a deceptive flick, or a short drop shot. If you find that pushing isn't working, you have to change tactics, step around and loop, change placement to the line, or vary your timing. You cannot be a one-trick pony. You must have a flexible game plan. To summarize, in a match, when receiving with your backhand, first focus on neutralizing the sidespin by mirroring the server's racket angle. Start with a safe, high percentage return. If that's not working, add a little more pace. If that fails, switch to your forehand and try a flick. Don't be stubborn and stick to one losing tactic. The moment you start forcing shots out of frustration, you have fallen into your opponent's trap. Your first layer of strategy must always be consistency. If that's not enough, gradually increase the quality of your shot to about 30 to 50% of your power. If you're still losing the point, it's time to change the shot, not to add more power to a failing tactic.